The term or the idea that I used for this assignment was cognitive diffusion. So, cognitive fusion is a term that is used when your cognitions dominate your awareness, therefore affecting your behavior and your thoughts. When you are so cognitively fused or consumed by your own thoughts, they dominate both your overt and your covert behaviors, usually in a negative way. Especially when we're so stuck to our thoughts, they start to become a reality for us because it's all we can think about or experience on a day-to-day basis. Cognitive fusion is only present when it is problematic. Therefore, the opposite does exist, which is called cognitive defusion, and it's used to separate oneself from these harmful thoughts. The purpose of diffusion is to be aware of your own thoughts and emotions, but being able to respond flexibly to them so that we can continue to live a happy and fulfilling life. By being able to separate yourself from these thoughts, we can observe them without getting caught up in them or getting lost in them. Ultimately, either being able to let them go or even accept them. Within being able to diffuse your thoughts, most techniques to help with this include noticing, naming, and normalizing the thoughts. These three areas are crucial for being able to properly diffuse from your thoughts because you can almost become blind to them when you're so fused. Being able to know what you're dealing with and how severe it is also helps you diffuse from them. Normalizing and validate the thoughts ultimately leads to either, like I said, the acceptance of the thoughts or the diffusion of them. One specific ACT intervention that encourages this process of diffusion is called diffusing from negative thoughts, but more specifically using the technique of singing and silly voices. So within this specific technique, the purpose is to challenge any negative thoughts or self-judgment by either silently singing them in your head, or you assign them kind of like a cartoonish voice in your head so that when you hear it, it's in that said cartoonish voice. By applying this technique, the following can happen. You're able to create distance from the negative thoughts, which can kind of serve as a reminder that thoughts are not necessarily facts, but they're thoughts. So, like, in other words, they're not necessarily facts just because they're there. And you can also take the time to choose what you want to do or how you want to respond by taking a step back from those thoughts. It breaks the overall automatic control and power that the negative thoughts have and makes them seem not so bad when you look at it from an alternative perspective or a perspective from far away. So, for example, let's say I have the thought that I'm going to fail my exam, which is a pretty negative thought, and the more I keep thinking about it, the more I'm probably going to fail. So how you would apply this technique in this situation would be to think to yourself, okay, in my head, I'm thinking I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. So you can kind of give it like a cartoonish voice or like a singing voice almost and like tell yourself like, I'm gonna fail, or you know what I mean, something silly like that, so that you can kind of like distance yourself from it and think to yourself, okay, just because I think I'm gonna fail, or just because I'm telling myself I'm going to fail, I'm not necessarily going to fail. I can do things to work on it, like I can study, I can, you know what I mean, review homework, review assignments in order to not fail. So by doing it in a singing voice or a cartoonish voice, you kind of take away the importance or the seriousness of it, and you kind of take a step back and look at it and you be like, okay, like I'm going to fail. And it's almost kind of like a joke in a sense, but it makes you feel better because it's not a fact. Just because I'm thinking that I'm going to fail, it's not a fact, and that doesn't mean I am going to fail. So, yeah, that's an example, and that's the technique.